It's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio Chartered Accountant and Public Affairs Analyst Sheson Okunade and Public Affairs Analyst Sheun Awogbenle. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank God it's Friday. You're looking the part.
Of course, after having that long week, it's time to have some nice time.
All right, let's head straight to the papers now, and I begin with News Direct. National Assembly probe tension in MDA's 14 banks over 2.7 trillion naira fraud on claimed dividend. To the front page of the Daily Times, anti-corruption war. Federal government recovers 200 billion naira in final forfeiture. Malami says $325 million Abacha loot, $75 million connected to Malabu oil transaction, part of recoveries. To the front page of the blueprint, Bayelsa and Kogi polls. Candidates sign peace accord. INEC pledges preferential treatment for persons with disabilities. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And on the front page of The Guardian, CCB, that's the Code of Conduct Bureau, AGF, moved to block bank accounts of 200 public officers. Bureau plans to automate operations. Malami whittles down powers of EFCC, ICPC. And finally, on the front page of the Daily Sun, as presidency opens up on Oshibaju, Awo's grandson, ex-governor Ajimobi's daughter among sacked VP's aides. All right, gentlemen, let's go back to the front page of the blueprint, talking about the forthcoming elections in Bayelsa and Kogi states. The candidates have signed a peace accord. I wonder how that comes to you, knowing that how much impact have signing peace accords had during elections? We know the states to be one of the volatile states when you talk about Bayelsa and you talk about the happenings in Kogi state. And we also see that the SDP candidate, that's Natasha Akpoti, the INEC has said, okay, she should be reinstated back as one of the candidates contesting the elections. What do you make of this move by INEC? I'll start with you, Sheson.
The two states in question, we understand the velocity, how volatile this area are. If we take the election to the presidential one, that is really not their primary constituency. We understand the number of lives that were lost. And during that particular election, both for the senatorial and those peace accords were signed. It's high time people respect what they are actually signing when it comes to this. And if we actually value lives, not only the people that are contesting, but the people, the followers, they desperate, you understand that?
It seems we've come to make elections a do or die affair.
Aside the people that are actually contesting for those posts, the followers too are a problem. You discover that most of the extra miles they intend to go because of what they presume to gain if their candidate win. It's actually the key thing. And when you talk of greed, you say going into politics is service to humanity and to service to people. But it's no longer there. Because if it's a service, why do you need to kill yourself? You win, you take it, you lose, and there'll definitely be this cooperation between the winners and the loser. But because that does not play, winner takes all, loser kicks it out. So everybody wants to do everything at all cost to make sure that they take the position.
How much impact is this having on development and our democracy?
Well, it has profound impact on development and in fact our democracy, because I recall that during the last election, Kano particularly was a very volatile spot. We had quite a lot of lives were actually lost. So when you lose quite a lot of lives in an election, what you do, you also lose quite a lot of properties. So the signal you are only sending to the international community is that, the Nigeria's democracy, while we keep saying that it's actually growing, but the truth is that, we send a very bad signal about, our respect for the rule of law and our respect for democratic ideals. Particularly, when we talk about, we're talking about Bayelsa and Kogi, and Bayelsa actually has an history for being a very volatile, spot when it comes to election. But the peculiarities that is actually coming into this election for Kogi is actually what makes it, sort of look volatile when you talk about this election, considering the fact that you have, a sitting governor that is perceived to have not done so well. I mean, this was a governor that didn't pay salaries for quite a lot of months.
And then the VP, the deputy governor drama.
Exactly. You know, when you also factor all of those things, and the fact that he's actually from the minority part of Kogi State, the PDP candidate is, is more from the majority part of Kogi State. So when you look at all of those things, and that is why we are beginning to, sense a feel of violence, particularly in Kogi State. But I think that on the flip side, we might not really have so much of, violence in Bayelsa, because everything has been calm. Candidates have gone about their campaigns normally. So I don't think where we are most likely going to be fixated.
So what's the essence of signing a peace accord?
As always, it has always been cosmetic. We have politicians who want to get power at all costs. People, like I said, people are actually greedy for power. The truth is that the quality of candidates in our elections has been largely uninspiring over time. And, most people, most Nigerians have become completely aloof and indifferent to those candidates because they do not, most of the time, they don't represent their wish. They want candidates that represent some certain principle and ideals. But what we have seen is a departure from that so far. So most Nigerians are really not excited about the choice. I'm sure when you go to Kogi, and they will tell you, in fact, if they had some other candidates, they'll be excited about it. But the truth is that we must continue to remind our politicians that their actions is a precedent, their actions is history. They either want to be remembered, their actions.
Do people still bother about being remembered anymore?
Well, we've lost that part, sincerely speaking. If you look not only in terms of election, even the Corruption Act that we have there, gone are those days when our founding fathers will want their names to be, written in the books, where you say these are some of their achievements. What everybody is all about is what can I gain for myself now. People are amassing wealth for a child unborn. I keep telling individuals, when you start thinking of the future of what you are going to leave them for, you are building different houses, and you said you want your children to inherit them. But the children you want to inherit some of those properties are sent out of the country to go and study. Do you expect such to come back and meet that dilapidated building that is really not trending? So why do you want to kill yourself because of some of those things? But I need to send a signal to the followers too, not only on the path of the people that are contesting. Is your life worth sacrificing for this? Take for example, the Kogi you referred to. You discover that the SDP candidate that has just been reinstated is from the side of the incumbent governor, and they are minority. So you expect that there will be a split of vote there. Absolutely. And that will give like a plus to the other candidate who is from the majority. So you can imagine that everything that it will cost them. But it should be not on the part of the leaders alone, but the followers. That your life
because
is
it is their votes that count.
That counts. Not your life does not worth, sacrificing for some of those things. Because as soon as they get in there,
Sean, quickly.
Well, I think it just speaks to the kind of politics that we still play in this country. It's the politics that ideas no longer fly. And, it is not a battle of ideas. That is why, in the democratic parties, a lot of rigor does not actually go into getting this candidate. Take, for example, United States. You go through a lot of debates and all of those things. So it has to be about, the strength of the ideas. But that is not what we have seen so far. It is about the money. It's about how much money you have to spend and how much violence you have to deploy.
So much to talk about on this topic. Thank you, gentlemen, for your insight.
Now it's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio chartered accountant and public affairs analyst Sheson Kwade and public affairs analyst Sean Awogbenle. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll look at stories making the headlines this morning. It says here in News Direct, National Assembly probe tension in MDA's 14 banks over 2.7 trillion naira fraud unclaimed dividend. The Daily Times says anti-corruption war, federal government recovers 200 billion naira in final forfeiture, as according to Malami. Says $325 million Abacha loot, $75 million connected to Malibu oil transaction, part of recoveries. The Blueprint says Bayelsa Kogi polls, candidates sign peace accord. INEC pledges preferential treatment for persons living with disabilities. The Guardian says CCB AGF moved to block bank accounts of 200 public officers. The rider says here, Bureau plans to automate operations. Malami whittles down powers of EFCC ICPC. The Daily Sun says, as presidency opens up on Oshimbajo, Awo's grandson, ex-governor Ajimobi's daughter among sacked VP's aides. The Daily Trust says here, and of course we'll stick with this story this morning, why customs bans fuel supply to border communities. Residents groan, Ipman backs decision. That's in the Daily Trust this morning, so we will stick with this story. Gentlemen, why customs ban fuel supply to border communities? It trended yesterday all over, and it's elicited some reactions. What do you say about this?
Well, for an economy like Nigeria that is still largely undiversified, that needs to stimulate growth as much as we can do. As much as we can, we also need to accelerate, in quick succession. It is actually interesting to note that we are still having to subsidize consumption, mostly, fuel. And that's why so many of us have actually called on the federal government to actually remove subsidy from fuel.
The last time we tried to remove fuel subsidy, you know how it panned out.
But I mean, we have all seen that this money can actually be invested into some other aspect of the economy. Mostly the human capital sector. Fundamentally education, health. If you need to stimulate growth and you need to get people out of poverty, you cannot continue to subsidize consumption when productivity is extremely low. Now, it is even interesting that, aside from the fact that at some point we've heard about inflation around, the number of liters that we actually consume as a country. Most of us disagree. I heard they say we consume about 50 million liters. I mean, some said we consume 30 million liters. And in fact, some of us feel Nigeria as a country cannot consume up to that. Now, we still subsidize all of these things, and they still find their way into border communities. I mean, these are not Nigerians. These are not countries and Nigerians. These are essentially diversions. So these things still find their way when we are still struggling with self-sustenance. We are not self-sufficient as a country. We still diversions of subsidized fuel still find their way into. Don't forget that Nigeria actually goes to refine most of these products at even costlier prices, because the landing it now comes at a certain landing cost that makes it very difficult for us to actually sustain it. So I mean, it is interesting, and I think that I want to commend customs for actually standing up to it, because we cannot continue to subsidize consumption and still allow diversion.
All right, let's hear Ansheso.
Yeah, to me, it's something that they should have done in a very long time. Putting this ban to neighboring countries. As far as we are concerned, we are not only going in line with what Shem said, we are subsidizing this fuel, and the ones that have been moved to this neighboring country is still at a cost at which government are subsidizing. And these are meant for us in this nation and not outsider. So you discover that the so much aggregated figures of what we consume on a daily basis are not only for the Nigerians, but for the neighboring countries. And you discover that, I remember those days when we used to have fuel scarcity, of which we no longer hear. Those neighboring countries hardly have scarcity, because it's more profitable for you to sell to the neighboring country than the country. So you discover that what is being subsidized for that we are supposed to enjoy, the outside are benefiting and we are being punished for it. So these are things that we should have acted upon. But that custom is coming up with it now is a very welcome development. Yes. Let's look at what I expect that this should do is that definitely once you have closed the border, we'll have the actual consumption, which will definitely balance the demand and supply, which will influence the pricing. Okay. So that once this is done, the aspect of you buying fuel at a very high rate should drop, because those neighboring countries, you have more supply on ground than what we actually demanding for. So this we assist to improve the economy. Okay. Every country must be self-sufficient first before you start saying you want to go
but
around.
won't this create a backlash? Because we saw in some parts of newspapers this morning, Ghana has told Nigerians who own businesses to evacuate by November 14th. Now, that is just Ghana. What do you think Chad will do, Niger will do, Togo and the likes? Won't this create a backlash?
Theophilus is a challenge to our government. For me, it's a welcome idea. Come back home and let's fix it up. You see, average Nigerian that you see outside there actually improve the economy of those countries. The level of strength we put at our deliverables on daily basis improve their economy. Why is it that so many of them are actually complaining when these borders are closed that we are impacting on their own economy? Let those people come on. But the challenge is the government must do what is needful. Invest more in infrastructural development to make the people that are coming in with their business have some other things to do.
We have Nigerians who are based in all these countries that we have border relations with.
Yep.
Right. To add quickly, I mean, Nigeria cannot continue to play big brother when, in-house we are still struggling with so many things. I mean, you're struggling with poverty, you're struggling with unemployment, we're struggling with quite a lot of things. And in fact, we need to begin to put how much is Nigeria exactly budgeting to subsidize for on an annual basis. We need to know, because for a long time, I can remember in the 8th Senate, they consistently demanded from the executive to bring budget for fuel subsidy. That they now call on that recovery, right? So by the time you actually stop, and that's why I'm actually with customers on this, you need to stop all those diversions. Then we need to get the exact leaders that we consume as a country, so that the Nigerian parliament can now begin to appropriate, they can begin to appropriate effectively for that, for that subsidy if we are going to continue. But for me, I think that Nigeria should stop subsidy. We can, the money that we put into subsidy, through political will, we can begin to invest them into some other sectors of the economy that can actually accelerate growth and sustain development.
Just in line with what Sean said, it is a part of the world that will subsidize consumption. Yeah. Most developed nations that we talk of today subsidize production. Yeah. You need to give rise, all those businesses we're talking of, make available the infrastructure things that we need to do, and make available subsidy for those that wants to go. You can imagine a real genuine business person cannot have access to good foreign exchange, but you have foreign exchange for you to go for pilgrimage and all those things. So if you are able to subsidize production and let the consumption flows the way it should, not subsidizing that, then you'll be better off for it. Rather than, because as soon as you consume it, you excrete it and let it just be. But let's subsidize more production and play down on consumption. On the long run, the beginning might be difficult, but on the long run, it will definitely pay off for us.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking to us on the issues in the newspapers this morning. Thank you
for having us.
Well, it's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio Chartered Accountant and Public Affairs Analyst Sheson Kwade and Public Affairs Analyst Sheon Awugbinli. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Morning.
All right, we'll head straight to the papers now, and I begin with the News Direct. National Assembly probe, tension in MDA's 14 banks, over 2.7 trillion naira fraud, unclaimed dividend. And on the front page of the Daily Times, anti-corruption war, federal government recovers 200 billion naira in final forfeiture. Malami says $325 million Abacha loot, $75 million connected to Malabu oil transaction, part of recoveries. And on the front page of the Blueprint, Bayelsa and Kogi polls candidates sign peace accord. INEC pledges preferential treatment for persons living with disabilities. To the front page of The Guardian now, CCB, AGF moved to block bank accounts of 200 public officers. Bureau plans to automate operations. Malami whittles down powers of EFCC, ICPC. On the front page of the Daily Sun, as presidency opens up on Oshibaju, Awo's grandson, ex-governor Ajimobi's daughter among sacked VP's aides. To the Daily Trust, why customs bans fuel supply to border communities. Residents groan, Ipman backs decision. The Nation now, pains gains of land border closure by LCCI as the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Customs row over ban on fuel supply at border towns. And finally, on the front page of this day newspaper, presidency denies sack of Oshibaju's aides. All right, gentlemen, we'll look at the story on the front page of the Daily Times, the anti-corruption war. Details here. So far, the federal government says it has recovered 200 billion naira in final forfeiture. Says that $325 million, Abacha loot $75 million dollars connected to Malabu oil transaction, part of the recoveries. Just basically talking about the recoveries made so far in connection with looted funds so far. But then questions have arisen as to how are these monies being spent? Because we do not have data, like we were saying off camera. One of the things that has been the challenge here is data. And that has also brought into the aspect transparency in the aspect of this monies being judiciously used, because one of the issues or the things that the government talked about with regards to the Abacha loot was that it was given this monies to, they were giving this monies to the poorest of the poor. And so many questions have arisen, gentlemen. I need your reaction to this issue. How far, what do you make of these recoveries? Is it really making the needed impact?
Yeah, the recoveries, I keep asking myself questions. We recover so much and people get impoverished with so much money you have recovered. Well, that's confusing. No, of course, reason. It will continue because there is no data to play around with. We were told that some of these recoveries will be given to the poorest of the poor. Who determines that? Where is the data to show that this person we want to give this to is indeed poor? Who are the people that manages when this government?
And some of it are being used for the social intervention program also.
How many people are benefiting from it? The so-called 5,000 money that are being given to the poorest of the poorest to kickstart something, of which we have said that of what benefit would that be? That is something that someone will use to eat rather than setting up a business. The fact remains that who determines the level of those guys that will collect the money? Some of this money that are supposed to trickle down, we discovered that civil servants use it to trade. Politicians use it to win people. Because ordinarily, even when you are campaigning, you don't even give 5,000, you do more than that. Now the federal government is doing this. So we discovered that some of these so-called recovers funds are not properly channeled. For me, you don't need to give us fish. Use some of those things to give us infrastructure and let us go all out. If there is good power supply, somebody who does not even go to school will become an artisan.
Nigerians are hardworking people.
Yes. When you see us outside this country, the level at which we develop other people's economy with our creativity, you marvel. So we don't need you to give us money. We don't need the money. Create the basic infrastructure for people to ride on. Provide electricity, provide good roads, rather than sharing it and saying you are giving to the poor, which we don't have the database to determine. Who determines that? If I wake up this morning and I tell you I'm a poor man, will you? I'm a poor man when you compare it to politicians.
We want to check your bank account first to determine that.
So we need data to justify this, if that must be. Otherwise, divert the funds to infrastructural development. That people you don't need to give them money. They will create idea, key into those developments.
But some persons might want to disagree with you in terms of do not give people this monies. I don't know how you see this aspect of what he has said now. Are we really channeling this monies into proper use from your point of view?
And first of all, I need to quickly commend the EFCC. I think their capacity has actually been strengthened under President Buhari, and I think that they've actually made a whole lot of progress, to be honest, compared to where we're actually coming from. And that's why, I mean, it leaves credence to all of the recoveries that we have actually made on this
and the fight against corruption.
But the truth is that a lot can still be done. But, I mean, we have to commend this government for the, decent fight against corruption so far. However, quick one, we need to talk about two things: transparency and accountability.
Absolutely.
Nigerians are actually not clear. They are not clear on what the government has actually used the recoveries for. I mean, you've recovered so much. Can we specifically have in detail what the government has used the recovered loot for? We need to know. I mean, Nigerians are unclear about that, particularly for one. I'm unclear. I'm sure you also don't even know what the government has used all of these recoveries for. And that's why, I mean, it feels like a paradox when you say you have recovered so much. I mean, over 200 billion. Yeah, I was, watching, yes, this chairman said they have actually secured over 800 convictions only alone in 2019 so far. But the point is, if you have recovered so much, why are we still having to borrow to fund our budget?
Absolutely.
Don't forget that you are borrowing to fund your budget. I mean, you are still servicing the budget, the loans that you have actually collected over time. So we have a fundamental problem with revenue in this country. Why do we still have a major challenge with revenue when you have recovered so much? I mean, I know that the Abacha loot for $320 million was actually recovered from the Abacha loot. Now, aside from the issue of transparency and accountability, now let's talk about perhaps what the government said they have been investing. We know, if we're not clear about anything, we know that when the government says they have been using the money to finance the social investment program, and most of us have said that social investment program is not a sustainable approach or model to get people out of poverty. It is only a palliative
measure
that cannot get the bulk of your population out of poverty. And that's why we're saying that, I know we're talking about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is actually the way to go. What the government needs to do is to invest in the macroeconomic environment. By the time you invest in you have 60% of Nigeria's young population. Nigeria has 60% of Nigeria's population are actually young people.
Yes.
These young people are vibrant, they are enterprising, and they are mobile. What you only need to do is to leverage on the strength of Nigeria's young people, because they are enterprising, they are innovative, and they are creative. What you need to do is to create the enabling environment that encourage their skills and that encourage their capacity. And then all of this capacity can begin to contribute to economic growth and development. These are the ways to actually get people out of poverty. It is not by giving people 5,000 naira. And again, it is not scientific. The 5,000 naira is not scientific. We're not sure how, like you said, how do they determine who gets 5,000 naira?
Absolutely.
Perhaps, why are you not getting the 5,000? So, the truth is
I
that
don't look like I'm poor. Maybe my account is empty.
Is it by
what
no?
I'm saying is that it is not scientific, it is not proven, it is not empirical. How do you determine who gets 5,000 naira? I mean, just go to the north and you randomly pick people. So it should not be, like the opposition said, build up to the 2019 election. It should not be the social investment program should not be, quote and unquote, a medium for a model for sophisticated vote buying. It should actually be seen as an approach which should get people out of. Why I disagree completely that it can get people out of poverty. But if the government has said that this is their program, we must see that it is truly working. But to be honest, it is not working.
All right, but then we must, like you said, commend the efforts of the
EFCC.
agencies involved in fighting this corruption war. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you
on
very
TVC
much.
Breakfast.